Good afternoon, YouTubers, or good morning for those of you who are overseas. This is the Roaming Prepper, and today I will be doing my Tuesday talk show a little bit earlier than I normally do, partly due to both business and personal conflicts. So I won't be able to do it at my usual dinner time. So first and foremost, if anyone is online, I know I'm just starting right now. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Is it gibberish? If you cannot see me, please let me know. That would be very much appreciated. In any case, today is the, holy cow, it's the 20th of July. Where'd the year go? Oof, okay. That's kind of freaky. In any case, hope you all enjoyed my content tonight. I think it's gonna be pretty interesting. I've seen a lot of the larger channels were talking about your mental state, how to deal with what could happen if things collapse, if things go sideways. If you have not seen, I think Pinball's back online, Pinball Preparedness. If you haven't seen him, go find Pinball. He's fun. Oh, hey guys, hold on. Let me go back to my comments. Hey, thank you, Klingon Princess. That's 5x58. I feel special. I'm like puffed up now. It's like more me. But no, thank you. I'm just playing. Thank you very much for letting me know you can hear me. But Angry Prepper put out a very pointed video, and he was spot on. And, it's in typical Angry Prepper fashion, it was a colorful video to say the least, but he talked about people being prepared for watching other people do horrendous things and being ready to deal with that if that's what comes up. And as sad as it is, it's very much a possibility. When Texas grid went down, it was in the middle of winter. So even predators and pedophiles are not going to go out in -10 degree to look for kids in a playground. Nobody's out. But if that were to happen in the spring, the fall, if it was just a regional thing, last year in 2020, we saw a lot of instability. Fortunately, we had a government system, both at the local and the federal level, that could handle that. As much chaos as it looked like, it eventually went away. South Africa is an absolute shit show, excuse my French. And the fact that the warehouses got hit, I'm sure some of you saw my video on Saturday. It's almost like somebody riled up the public, and then they went and hit those big warehouses and took the food, the medicine, all these big supplies. Imagine that here in the States, where a riot breaks out, and while everyone's fighting in the streets, someone burns down the local Lowe's or takes all the food out of the HEB or Walmart warehouse. What would that do to that area that now suddenly has no food? And it just so happened today, my company had an EAP, which is Employee Assistance Program, which basically it's like the HR outreach. And they had a whole conversation about mental wellness and positive psychology. So I wanted to talk about that because I think these guys are spot on. I think it's absolutely relevant to what's happening today. Klingon, I don't know. That's bad. When the police and the citizens are sharing ammunition and kind of locking away their own town to protect it from the next town that's burning down, that's bad. In a way, I'm kind of happy my company transferred me out, 4 hours from any major city to this little city I live in, because if really bad things happen, it's going to take them a while to get here. But folks who live in the cities, it will go sideways. We've seen it all year. But yeah, South Africa was absolutely awful. And I actually wanted to talk about that because I came across this article after the lady talked about positive psychology and recovering post-Rona, and more importantly, helping your friends and family kind of get through sadness, bad feelings, fears of another shutdown. And I'll get into the positive stuff here in a minute. I came across this article kind of cross-referencing what this lady was saying. And this was very interesting. So if you don't watch Academy of Ideas on YouTube, I highly recommend you do it, because it's really a phenomenal channel. It's very well written, but they do an entire video on fear and social control. And I remember one of the things Arthur Verslius, who's another author, talks about is they use fear is, and they say it in this article, fear is the most powerful human emotion, right? It's what kept us alive in the day of woolly mammoths and tigers and whatnot. But it's also a tool whereby humans create fear in one another to get an outcome. They try to create an outcome. So this author, Verslius, who's cited here a few times in Academy of Ideas video, and the specific video is called Fear and Social Control. So I would recommend, it's about 15 minutes long. I'd recommend you watch it and pour a glass of wine or something, because at the end of it, and I read a lot of books. I love to read. I listened to that video and I sat there and went, holy crap. Fear, one of the ways that totalitarian regimes or dictators or other bad actors create power for themselves is creating waves of fear. For example, it's the Rona is there in China. Now the Rona is in Italy. Now there's a Rona here. Now there's alpha, beta, gamma, delta, lambda, epsilon, sigma, nu, whatever, blah, blah, on and on. It's constant waves of fear with little breaks in between. And before people can kind of process the first wave of fear, there's another one. They also will create confusion. They'll say one thing one day and then reverse themselves the next. George Orwell talked about it in Doublespeak. If you read 1984, they say one thing and then say what's contrary, but you have to accept both. So these are tools by which governments can get people to vote a certain way or support their budget, but when run amok, it can lead to dictatorships. And this is kind of what you see happening in South Africa. Yeah, it's a phenomenal collection these guys have there. Yes, that's basically what it is. Gaslighting is one of the newer terms. But in this case, like what you saw in South Africa, it started with food shortage, and people needed food, right? That's a very basic elemental need. And then it became, the government took the food. And then as people got riled up and it exploded onto the streets, everyone was, the media, or everyone was watching people steal TVs and whatnot. And it wasn't until 3 days later that I saw the article, which I pointed out on Saturday, that said somebody had systemically hit all the food and medicine warehouses and the large warehouses. They were emptying out industry. It's almost as if they had waited for this, and it could have been opportunistic. It could have been somebody saying, hey, this is a great chance to do what we were thinking. It could have been planned. We don't know. But, they cite here humans since the Industrial Revolution have become increasingly protected from the dangers that our ancestors face. So, and this was interesting. There are more things likely to frighten us than there are to crush us. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. So like Klingon Princess points out, the gaslighting effect. You create that fear, it's waves of fear, contradiction, confusion. Buy a mask, don't buy a mask. Get this, don't get that. Take this poke, don't take a poke. It confuses the crap out of people. It causes undue stress. And sometimes it's done from stupidity. Sometimes it's done to win or lose an election. But it can also be used very vividly to take control of a society. Hitler used it very well, very effectively in blaming Jews, gypsies. He had a whole list of people who were the reason Germany was in default, Germany was hurting, et cetera, et cetera. And people were hungry, they were tired, they were unemployed. And mind you, keep in mind, this was Germany back in the 30s. So this was essentially one culture. And he was trying to pick out sub pieces of that same culture. Imagine if it was a more diverse place, how many little groups he could have picked apart. Another thing, aside from fear and confusion and propaganda, is isolation and separation. If you separate and isolate, yes, correct, yeah, and that's exactly where I'm going. You beat me to the punch, Klingon Princess. Isolation and separation, it separates the humanity between the different people. And these guys go through a lot of it here. The whole aim of practical politics, wrote H.L. Mencken, is to keep the populace alarmed and hence clamorous to be led to safety by menacing it with endless series of hobgoblins, many of which are illusionary or imaginary. This absolutely, reading these articles and watching the video, which is very well done, absolutely floored me. And it got me thinking, okay, so this is how we create social control. This is how we create that fear that allows us, or allows a government to control people. So in the modern day, how does that go down, right? Because I've seen a lot of the channels I follow, and Klingon Princess, you probably noticed it too. A lot of these great channels, they've recently got strikes, they got dinged. I'm waiting, eventually they're going to come after me. I'm trying to keep low key, but you know, there's a point you say the wrong thing and you get the ninja. How does it happen? Like how do they lock people in online jail? So I found an article that actually kind of describes how they do that. And by the way, before I go any further, I'm going to put, let's see. I think I can do it. Maybe not. Hold on, bear with me just a second. I'm going to put that for those of you who come later. There we go. So, but I'm going to share this one, which I think is really interesting. Now, this was written, ironically, in 2019, and this was obviously when President Trump was in power, not Biden. But recently, Jen Psaki had also mentioned that they were encouraging social media to take certain steps to eliminate misinformation, which many people said could very quickly wind up resulting in unfair censorship. But how do they do it? Like, what are the technical steps to that? So this article, which is web safety tips, ironically, and I'll put that in there so you guys can all do your own homework. So some of it is by your IP address or your VPN, depending on where you're logged in, what your login is. So it's not just email specific. So if you get put in the penalty box by the little online Cossacks and you start a new account with a new email and a new name or whatever, but you're coming off the same IP address, they may block the whole IP address, which unfortunately would block other people in that same location. So one among the ways they do it is DNS manipulation. And this is what they do in China. They redirect the link you clicked. Hey, Ashley, thanks for coming in today. They redirect. Sorry, I had a bunch of stuff scroll by. I just realized you had said hello. They will redirect your connection. So you click on, website 1, and it goes to the ISP and it gets redirected. Anyone who clicks on website 1 goes to website F, and off you go. So that's how in China and in North Korea they're doing it, for those who actually have internet in North Korea. Another one is port blocking, and then engine search result manipulation, which I'm very confident occurs pretty much worldwide, where you every time you search, you're looking for a very specific thing. It may be in the search, but you're having to scroll, 20 spots down to see what someone else in another country might see as spot number 2. And before that, you see all the others. So these are all ways that people get put in online jail, or they get put in online redirection. IP address blocking, which is what I mentioned earlier, and then fake resets. They send you reset packets, and they flood you so you can't see anything. And so when you click on the website, it said it's not available. This video is not visible, et cetera, et cetera. So these are all different ways that governments can kind of do that, and they also currently really be an authority on that. But you kind of get the picture there. It's interesting how this can be done. So again, a lot of fear and control things going on, and it just so happened a lot of the other YouTube content creators are mentioning being psychologically prepared for any eventuality. And this same week, my company had that lady talking to the employees about positive thinking and how to recover from what happened in the past. So they mentioned the Perma model, and I'd never heard of it before. So what exactly is a Perma model? And I'm going to put my stupid disclaimer at the bottom. This is only for reference. If you're suffering from depression or some other psychological issue, definitely get help. There are a lot of resources. This is simply a set of tools that are used to give people a way to impart positive thoughts. Basically, you teach yourself in habit to have positive thoughts. And actually, I wrote something down as she said a lot of people over their life will learn what she referred to as learned helplessness. And the example she took was she had a high school class. It was a video of a high school class, and they gave each of the groups 3 words, right? The first 2 words of the 2 groups were different. The third word was the same. And you had to figure out how many words could you create out of the first, each word. So in other words, like the first one was bat, and another word out of those 3 letters would be tab. And then the next one was, banana, and you could put ban, nana, and so on and so forth. Well, one group, both groups, the third word was the same, but one group, the first 2 words could not be used to create other words effectively. They were given an impossible task. The group on the right side was actually given words that were very easy to reorganize. And yes, thank you, anagrams. I couldn't remember what the hell they were called. Thank you. So it was anagrams, but the first group, the first 2 words were impossible anagrams. They were impossible to do. And so she said, okay, I want you to work on these. And when you're done, raise your hand. So of course, the right side of the room raised their hand much faster than the left side. And then she pointed out, I taught you learned helplessness. You looked at the first 2 and you got so frustrated and sad and depressed by that you didn't even attempt the third one, which was actually a very easy one. Whereas the kids on the right, and these kids were kind of shocked, and it was very eye-opening for them. And you think about it, a lot of times that happens to you at work. It happens to you in society, where you just get beat down to a point where you just stop trying. Some folks will think asymmetrically, and which I'm notorious for. When I used to take tests, I would skip around the test. I'm like, I can't do this one. I can't do this one. I can do that one, and then work my way backwards. I'd make my professors absolutely insane because they'd see me jumping back and forth. But most folks will simply go in order, and they get locked up and they struggle. So she says there's a way to break that negative cycle. So you learn helplessness. Also with the recent traveling illness. A lot of people repeated shutdowns, repeated this, repeated that. They just got beat down and they went into like a cocoon almost. So I'm going to share this because I think this is definitely a positive thing. And again, you know, if you know someone who's struggling with a very deep issue, make sure they get professional help. This is just, for me, this was more of a tool for folks who want to discipline themselves to think a different way. So PERMA, P-E-R-M-A, stood for positive emotion, engagement. R is relationships, but they emphasize positive relationships. M is meaning, and A is accomplishments. And this was is the Seligman's PERMA Plus model. And he was a professor back in the 90s on psychology, and it was meant, he created the structure for people to self-create a positive mindsets. And basically, you some of the people early on, he said they would just write PERMA, like they'd have that little chart you just saw on their wall or on their bedstand or something. So every day they would look and say, where did I have a positive emotion? When did I engage someone in a good way? Who are my positive relationships? Now that middle one's tough because sometimes you get sucked into a negative relationship. So they emphasize that sometimes you have to walk away from that negativity. But in an emergency, these things are very important. Again, my family, we went through 8 hurricanes. I was without power for 16 days after Ike with 3 kids under the age of 12. And we did okay. The kids actually had a blast, but a lot of it was positive stuff. You broke out the camping gear. We cooked in the backyard. They rode their bikes. We basically coned off the street because we were a kind of a side street. And the kids went nuts. All the kids were out there. Dogs were running loose. It was great. The kids had a blast. Yeah. Oh, that's a great book. Yeah. And folks, Klingon Princes put Man's Search for Meaning. And that's something he mentions. That's number 4, meaning. Do things that have a meaning, if nothing else for you and yours, but if they have a greater meaning, you're doing something positive for somebody, then that's a good thing. And positive emotion, they include hope, interest, joy, compassion, pride, gratitude. So a lot of these are interlinked with one another. And they point out ways to do positive emotion type stuff, spending time with people you love or you care about, doing stuff you enjoy. In a lot of ways, making YouTube content is kind of a creative outlet for me. And, you know, I learn stuff all the time because y'all ask me questions and sometimes I sit there and go, wow. Hey, Dr. Herbalist, thank you for stopping in. And yes, you're absolutely. Faith is very important. Meaning, again, that meaning, the M, and he kept this very generic, but M, the meaning, also engagement. If you're in a religious community of faith, you will go to church together. You will go to synagogue together. You will celebrate together. Even if you're only online, you're engaged with one another. These are positive things. And you notice this is the exact opposite of what I had covered earlier about fear and social control, right? Fear is the opposite of positive emotion. That's a negative emotion. It's a survival emotion, but it's negative. Isolation versus engagement. Again, positive relationships instead of hearing negativity all the time, having meaning as opposed to waiting for the next catastrophe. So, yeah, Dr. Herbalist, you're absolutely right. Everybody needs positive faith. And if you don't per se practice, I know some folks who don't practice a particular faith, but they pursue things like meditation or they pursue philosophy of the greater good. These are all ways to create that positive mentality. So if you find yourself in a funk, you can refer back to this PERMA. I thought this was an amazing, and I'm, you know, being an engineer, we're always using acronyms. Certain fears are good. And you may have, I don't know if you caught the very beginning, but fear was what kept us alive in the ancient days. It still keeps us alive. You know, you're walking down a street, you see an alley, and it's like, that's a shortcut, but you detect something that scares you. Well, you may have just avoided getting mugged, you know, because you go down the alley and someone will beat you up. But when the fear is uncontrollable, when it's always in waves to where there's never a positive spin on it. And again, that's a very good point. Having fear can make you stop for a minute and say, okay, how can this become a positive thing? I have fear of, you know, a riot outside. Well, and you should. How is that a positive thing for you? Well, it's pretty simple. It makes you start thinking, well, how do I avoid the situation? How do I avoid the danger? So and again, that's why in a preparedness mindset, you should be able to say, you know what? It's not stable outside. I fear that there's danger. So I'm going to stay at home, or I'm going to go with my friend and we're going to hunker down there away. So a lot of this stuff is important. And I was really shocked by the, having seen the Perma model and then seeing that fear and control. While I was looking for Perma, I found the fear and control article, which I threw the link in there. I'm going to put this Perma link in there for you guys as well. And again, I know I'm doing my live stream a little earlier than normal. I had work commitments and I have a commitment later this afternoon, but I wanted to at least take some time and share some of this positive news, and also understanding how that social control works, how they block channels, how fear or confusion can be used to manipulate people to vote or behave a certain way. It gives you some clarity. It gives you meaning, where you now understand the bigger picture. What we're seeing in South Africa is a lot of chaos. That's not congregating in a positive way. That's violence and fright. And that's, there are ways that can be used to manipulate the people. I can only imagine what's going on. And there's a couple of channels from South Africa I've been trying to keep up with, and they haven't posted in a bit. So I don't know if they took the web down or what, or if they're just having trouble with the infrastructure. But that's some bad stuff. And but there are ways to train yourself, train your mind to get yourself in a positive mindset. And again, Angry Prepper, he was very pointed and very unfiltered, and he said, you know, you may want to watch some of these videos of violence and other things, not to sit there and celebrate it, but to understand what you could wind up looking at in real life if something horrible happens and, you know, authorities lose control over society in areas or in general. If those of you who've never read Kyla Stone's books, she has a series called The Edge of Madness, or Edge of Collapse, I'm sorry. And she's a bit of a preparedness lady herself. I'd never heard of her. One of the things she points out, and it also came up in 1 Second After with Dr. Forstein, is when there's a collapse in a society, the worst actors then have free reign. There's nobody to keep them in check. Right now, a rapist or a violent person will not just run down this, well, in some cases they will, but most are hesitant to be violent for fear that police or society will grab them and lock them up or give them a punishment. When you have what has in South Africa, where there's rioting and fighting and people are just run amok, who's being attacked on the side streets? Who's being mugged? You know, who's addressing the violence, rapes, attacks? So again, societal control, using of fear, that was very negative in South Africa. But I found it very, very pointed, this Perma model. When you find yourself kind of in that dark place, or you're trying to stay focused on being positive and being prepared. Loving Life and Jesse Perez Casanova. Oh, there's still, Jesse Perez is up and running still? Okay, I'll go look again. Yeah, and again, looking for gas. Yes. And being realistic is the most important thing. But you can be realistic and not be somber or depressed. You can be realistic and then try to work within the framework of that which you have. And this is good stuff. I'll check Jesse Perez. Wasn't he the one? He was dressed in tactical gear the last time I saw him, and he was talking about the riots and whatnot. I need to. I think if it's the same guy I'm thinking of, I need to check him out. Speaking of that, I did see while I was looking at all this other stuff, I saw this one article, and I couldn't, as many of you noticed, President Biden has made it pretty clear in his last newscast. He said, look, communism has failed everywhere. And he said, I don't think socialism is a great substitute for that either. And so, which is a good thing. I applaud him for just throwing that out there. So, made the squad look like a bunch of knuckleheads, but he threw it out there, and that's great. And then I saw that video, and then I found this article not half an hour later, and I said, are you serious, guys? What a mess. So Peru is the latest country to experiment with socialism. This is from the Washington Examiner. In the past 100 years, there have been attempts to build socialist societies in at least 24 countries around the world. And this article, this writer points out, Soviet socialism was different than China, which was different from Yugoslavia, different than Cuba, etc. And every single one has ended in failure. But they just elected what they call themselves a left-wing socialist organization. It says he supports Marxism but opposes communism. But anyway, he said, hey, Heroic Prepper, how are you? And yeah, Herbalist, that's true. You have to be strong enough to know your limits and be able to do what you have to do. And it's tough. Not everyone can have that. But again, using that Perma model, trying to have that positive mental state will keep you focused and keep you moving forward. But again, so apparently, and this is more of a side note to this, but so they've elected what is referred to as a quasi-socialist president in Peru. Peru, though, their elections tend to fluctuate from left to right pretty hard. So I don't know, the guy might be in office 4 years and they'll kick him out. So that'll remain to be seen. But what I find interesting is going back to the original topic of fear and social control. Hey, Just Josh, good to hear you, brother. Yeah, be careful driving. Don't get in a wreck. And by the way, folks, if you haven't followed Heroic Prepper or Just Josh, check them out too. Josh was on fire earlier today. I was sitting here laughing at some of what he was saying, but he was spot on. So I won't steal his thunder. Go check out his video from this lunch hour. But again, this gentleman took power, and he did exactly what Chavez did. He said he's not going to take private rights. He was concerned about fear of foreigners affecting them, fear of the Rona, and they elected this guy. And the author of this article says, I lived in Germany, where a socialist dictatorship was established in the country's eastern regions after World War II, and they originally said, we're not going to go down the Soviet path, and then we all know they went down the Soviet path. Again, he refers to he refers to those same principles: fear, division, isolation, the fear and social control that is used to kind of get the populace in line with what they're wanting. And then, as I pointed out earlier, then back then they would simply, arrest the newspaperman. Now they block you on the net if you say the wrong things. But again, that same thing is a recurring model, or it's a recurring template that's used when a government tries to consolidate. And for the record, it can come from the left or the right. Hitler was considered a right-winger in his country, and Stalin was a left-winger. And ultimately, politics isn't really I don't believe politics is really a line. I think it's kind of a circle, and you go left or you go right, and you go from a republic to a dictatorship on the other side of the circle rather quickly. And so just, you guys have seen a lot of the big channels have gotten dinged lately. Some got kicked offline. They got taken away by the Cossacks. They got put in the penalty box. And all of them are talking about your psychological state and dealing with what could come in the future. And most of them are referencing South Africa. They're referencing some of the chaos we're seeing overseas. Right now, France is having absolute riots, and I wasn't able to find a good picture of it. But France has been having problems now for quite a while. Oh, here we go. So this one's from Forbes. And again, it's, and I'm sure they're trying to do the right things, but yeah. Oh, sorry, advertisement, and away with you. Oh, I don't want you, and I don't want you. There we go. A group of protesters unhappy with President Emmanuel Macron's stringent new health rules, which include a health pass or passport to enter venues, took to the streets on Bastille Day of all days. What they actually is blocking a lot of their channels so they couldn't propagate their own information and coordinate between the rioting groups. But they talk about, mandatory medical actions that are required and stuff like that. So again, fear and social control can be used to a positive end, but it's a very slippery slope for it to go down the toilet. And if we understand what we're seeing, we understand the fear, we understand the manipulation, you understand again, what I heard from the first person, learned helplessness, and I actually had to write notes while she was talking because it was phenomenal. The waves of fear, the propaganda, the contradictions, isolation and separation from one another makes people much more vulnerable. But if you understand that and you know that, you can apply positive principles like the Perma model and write your thinking, and then write the thinking of the people around you. This is a very strange time because the tumultuousness is not at the surface. It's under the surface right now. And I think that's what's throwing people off. It's more definitive when you see a riot, but when you know there's something wrong, but you can't put your finger on it, that's very disturbing to folks. And as Dr. Herbalist pointed out earlier, a certain level of fear is good. It motivates you, it keeps you focused. But when it locks you up, when it freezes you, that's where it becomes negative. So again, this was a very great model. And just to put it up there again, those positive emotions, engagement. I won't harp on things we can't control, but we can control that. We can control how we're thinking. And if you have an organized way of doing it, you will make yourself more disciplined and put yourself in a more positive light. It'll help you move forward in light of adversity. And there will be adversity. We don't know what yet, but I mean, California's on fire. I covered that on Saturday. I mean, there's fires everywhere. They're saying they're picking up smoke in New York City from the fires in Oregon. There's a lot going on. Some we can control, some we can't. What we can do, and again, The herbalist, Dr. Herbalist pointed it out. Having faith. And Klingon Princess, for those of you who came a little late, she put a few really good book references in there. I had to look back. Man's Search for Meaning. I just lost the other one. Loving Life. Oh no, that's the South Africa channels, Loving Life and Jesse Perez. But yeah, Europe's infrastructure is having a lot of issues. Yeah, and they're, well, right now, yeah, it's flooding, and we talked about that on Saturday. So there's a lot of instability going on right now. So all you can do is stay focused, pay attention to what's going on. And again, positive emotions, but not positive to the point of stupidity, as has been pointed out. Understand your limits, understand what you should or shouldn't do, but use that fear in the context of how do I make this a positive thing? And, you know, try to do things when you're if you see a new prepper online, by the way, guys, because I saw this on another channel. I got into it with someone on someone else's chat. A new prepper asked a very basic question and immediately got pounced on by a troll. And so I went after the troll because I didn't like what that person said. And then, you know, we had some words there. This model can be used for other people. So if you see someone new to the community and they ask what we think is a stupid question, it's probably because they just don't know. It's ignorance, it's lack of knowledge. So try to impart some of that knowledge that you've all accumulated and some of your advice as well. The more people who are paying attention and who have the ability to weather a storm, the better it is for all of us. So, but on that note, I'm approaching that time where I'm going to have to sign off because, like I said at the beginning, I got a couple of commitments I got to take care of. Guys, Godspeed to those of you on the road, especially just Josh. Drive careful because I know what city you're driving in, and they think it's the Autobahn. The speed limit, they added a 0 or something in Texas. Well, I'm in Texas too. We're just as bad. Yeah. Or they try and create fear to make themselves feel happy. Dr. Herbalist pointed out quite rightly, they like to speak out of fear. But if you can educate them and maybe turn a troll around to somebody who actually learns something, that's great. I put the links for the articles I had today, but if you're on the road traveling, Godspeed. You guys, please take care of yourselves. In the meantime, be safe, pay attention to what's going on, and most importantly, take care of yourself, your loved ones, and one another. And I will see you Thursday. I have a technical video, and I have no idea what it is because I forgot. But I did finally post the comparison, Josh, if you're still online, between the SIG 365 and the XDS, for those of you who wanted to see that. And God bless Dr. Herbalist. Thank you for coming by, and spread a little faith and cheer as best you can. And, you know, we may wind up covering up like a bad boxer and taking a beating later this year. But, you know, even Muhammad Ali took a bunch of beatings and he made it through for the most part. So you guys take care. God bless, and be safe on the road. Take care.